This is Synchronicity.
This is Synchronicity.
This is Synchronicity.
This is Synchronicity.
That, of course, is John Tesh's intro to NBA Tonight. What was it? NBA on NBC? Yeah, that's what it was. Man, that was good. As sung by me, because that's what that was, and that's how I'm going to open up every single episode from here on out with that. Different renditions. Maybe I'll do a jazzy version. Some other types. I don't know. We'll see. Jack Carroll. Funny guy. You're going to like this one. Jack is a comedian based out of the UK, but he travels and is hilarious and is super smart and wise. Wise is the most appropriate word. He's also, what are you, Jack? 17 now? 17? I'm sure you're aging. But he's, I wish I was that smart and wise when I was at his age. I was not even close. Not even close. So, I mean, what do we go into here? We go into comedy, we go into depression, we go into other stuff that I'm forgetting right now. But more to the point, I think you're going to really enjoy this episode. One note, Jack is in the UK. I was based in the East Coast when this was recorded, and we did it via Skype. And Jack was also leveraging his hotspot. So the connection goes in and out. You'll be able to hear everything, but it, goes in between kind of like telephone quality and a little bit better. So, I've listened to it. It's not the worst thing in the world, and I'm pretty tough when I want to hear stuff because Jack really does say a lot of awesome stuff, so it's definitely worth listening to, regardless of the audio quality, unless it was terrible. And then, I would say don't waste your time. It's, that audio is not good enough. Don't listen to it. So without further ado, here is Jack Carroll. Thanks a lot. All right, man. Thanks for doing this.
Cool.
So I figured it was the perfect time to start a podcast because everyone else is doing it. So that's usually when you get into things, when it's oversaturated, way too many people doing it, no one gives a shit. Yeah. That's the time to do it. That's when I identified. So I think it's appropriate.
Definitely.
So there's no real general theme of the podcast yet. I'm just interviewing people who I know and I think are cool and are doing cool things. So, I don't really have a format, but I would like to start with...
And me.
Yeah.
You see already. Is that...
That's good. So I wanted to start though with how do we know each other? Maybe you could explain that. How do we know each other? Because I was thinking about it. I was like, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah. Well, I reached out to the Love Serve Remember Foundation about 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, and you were the one who answered the message, and and then also the one that I harassed to get Raghu to email me back, and then
that is true.
That's I think basically it.
That's one of my primary jobs, is getting Raghu to email the right people back. So I wanted to talk to you about your comedy mainly because you're one of the funniest people I know. You're also, not to make this sound weird, you're one of the youngest people who I interact with on a normal basis in like an adult way. I know other young, but they're kids. They're like real kids, they're not kind of like you.
Not weird.
Yeah, not weird. Exactly.
Not weirdos.
Exactly.
Here's what you were trying to say politely.
That's basically what I was trying to say.
Yeah.
I don't know any other weird younger people that I hang out with.
Yeah.
But I do think you're definitely one of the more interesting people I know, and your comedy is a huge part of who you are. For people who don't know, I'll have a little intro here explaining who you are, but you're now on a TV show in the UK, which I did a little research on, popular TV show. And so I kind of wanted to talk to you. You mentioned you reached out about the Ram Dass stuff. I know we've spoken here and there about spiritual stuff. We've gone on both sides of the coin with it, very good, very weird. So I just wanted to talk about, like, how do you in any way fuse kind of your personal interests, maybe outside of comedy? I know it's all related with what you do as, your job, profession as a comedian.
I think that is like the main thing, the main responsibility for a good comedian to have is to try and, see what's funny about what interests them. And like, I think how do I do it really? I don't know. That's a difficult one because like, I think, with your music and stuff as well, when you're there making something, it's difficult to see a process. But I think like, I think that is the sort of hallmark of a decent comedian, is to be able to, in whatever way you do it, to be able to fuse your, personal interests into your act. I think that is a good thing to aim for. And as far as how I do that, I suppose, is just, I think first of all, I'm interested in like what's funny generally, like what's odd and what's fringe and what's esoteric, right. And then also, so I think that lends itself quite naturally to finding a place in my act.
That makes sense.
So that's what I'd say to that, if it's not too
no, I think that makes sense. I mean, I think also I'm just interested generally in how comedians do what they do, because I think not everyone, but a lot of people like to think that they're funny, right? They're funny. Yeah. Their friends laugh at them. They tell jokes or whatever, regardless of whether they actually are funny or not, of course. But to actually do it, people who I know who are comedians, from college friends to people now, I mean, it is a really interesting way to approach the world, because you're putting a particular spin or bent on things that I think what makes things funny is thinking about things in an unusual way. So it kind of leads people to different, approaches to it. So I get that too.
I think that's the sort of dangerous thing is things after a certain point. It's like, once you're on a sort of, like, I forget who said it, but once you're on a sort of spiritual path, it can be very hard to close your eyes to that sort of thing again. Once you think like a comedian, it can be very, and that can sort of create, because after a sort of weird or traumatic event, you think, oh well, it's bad. Might get a new 5 minutes of material, and that is the sort of, the dichotomy and the weirdness that a lot of comics have.
It's definitely, it's an interesting aspect of looking at life. I think it's because a lot of people are like, a common misconception, I think, is that the best comedians are like depressed, miserable people, because of either the way they're looking at the world, or there's just a correlation, like the same correlation people say between talented musicians and dying before the age of 27. May or may not be true. Some examples of it, of course, but I'm curious to hear your take on that, because I'm sure you have a lot of comedian friends, and I'm sure you. Yeah.
I've been funny that you're bringing up that dying before the age of 27 thing, because my not funny,
hilarious actually,
odd that you bring it up, because my sister and my mum went to see the Amy Winehouse film at the weekend, and it's sort of weird how that is a common sort of theme that is thrown out there, that it seems to have something to do with iconoclasm. And I was thinking, like, the rational explanation for that is, well, maybe we just don't remember the ones that live quite as much as we remember, the ones that die. But that seems to have something to do with the sort of energy that, radiates off those types of people. And then, it's sort of, it's about finding a way, I suppose, to mediate that and sort of
Well, they say it's like the saying, the candle that burns twice as bright lasts half as long, right?
Yeah.
It's like expending so much energy, it can't last that long, which I think there's something to be said that. What about the connection between being depressed and a comedian? Real or not?
It happens.
Yeah.
I think, because I was talking with my uncle about this because he works with depressed people, and he's just gone to work with bipolar organisation, and I didn't know when he told me, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I'm sorry.
No, it's
I'm
good,
sorry.
but I'm sorry. I don't have the rim shot effect in the podcast yet. I'll put it in post.
Yeah, do.
I will.
Thank you. Yeah, but I was talking with him about that, and it's sort of. I think a comedian is sort of in the same way that maybe an autistic person sees normal people's behaviour as slightly odd or weird and laughs. They're sort of not like physically disassociated, but mentally sort of to the ways of society. I think a lot of them can see through the game, and if you're not able to sort of to manage that, then I suppose that can lead to a sort of depression and alienation, and maybe that's where it happens. And also, there's your brain has got to be you've got to be a little bit mad to be able to do what comics do on a regular basis. That
Absolutely.
You've got to be a little bit crazy already.
In a good way, and also could be a bad way. I mean, I think that's incredibly poignant what you're saying about the connection of seeing the world and kind of seeing through bullshit, or not necessarily bullshit, but just kind of the systems that maybe some of us take for granted, the veil or something. Seeing through it, you can have one of two approaches, and an analytical, quick mind that can make jokes out of something is a very useful skill if you actually realize that there's a levity behind it. But if you start taking it seriously and, really seeing that still while being a comedian, I think that's really, really an astute point. I mean, I think that's really, really smart. I mean, that's because you look at any comedian, I always think the big exception to the unhappy comedian rule, and I know there's a ton, it's a total generalization, but it's like someone like Jerry Seinfeld, who just genuinely seems like a guy who's happy all of the time, like really doesn't, like, maybe to a fault, who knows, but he's a very successful, arguably one of the most successful.
Oh, definitely.
So, and look at someone like Ricky Gervais, right? Someone who, while certainly, campaigns for animal rights and very serious issues, you can tell, like, it really isn't taking himself that seriously,
No.
So it's very, I think there's a lot to be said with having the right approach to see this stuff, but also not engage with it, which I think is a relevant metaphor for life in a big way, right? So
definitely.
Very astute. That's brilliant, man.
Yeah, definitely.
That's really interesting.
That definitely, because you can't get too attached. It is, it's all. I think the point of if you're not having fun in a way, you're missing the point of the thing. Like, you should. It can't all be fun, obviously, but it's. I think just it is good to laugh and try and, because like, I don't think like a lot of people go around saying, "Oh well, if I didn't laugh, I'd cry." I don't think that's the case.
Right.
Like, I think if I didn't laugh, I'd be much more unhappy, because therefore that is what I, first and foremost, above all else, above all the reading and the sort of getting deep into the esoteric weird stuff, is like, that is what I do and have done for forever.
Yeah.
Like forever. So if I didn't have that, I don't know how my life would have turned out, really.
Yeah. Well, and I think, one of the other reasons that I think I've noticed with a lot of comedians, not all of them, or just people who I think are funny, they have a
a clarity about them. They see things in somewhat of a clear way, which doesn't mean that they're going to approach it in the right way, but they have to have some sharp, incisive kind of perspective on what's going on. Maybe an outsider's perspective, maybe an insider with an outsider's perspective. So I think there's clearly a relationship there between the parallels of what people experience throughout their lives, the ups and downs, how you're going to react to those, what is the meaning of it, because we all know like a ton of fucked up shit happens in the world, and you certainly have any number of approaches that, ways to approach fucked up things. You can cry about it, you can grieve about it, you can laugh about it, and they're all appropriate at various times. It's not to exclude one from the other, but I think that lightness that comedy gives people, whether they know what the real benefits of it are or not, is really important. I mean, one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you about all this stuff is I myself and many other people I've known can fall into the trap of getting spiritual to the point of it not being fun and it being like a chore and something serious. Like you get the pictures of like, Catholic nuns like beating people for doing the wrong thing, or, people not eating and fasting for 20 days. And it's a huge thing. And there's reasons that people do those things. It's not to say that they're completely just categorically wrong, but when it becomes something serious, I think that puts like a rigidity to it, which is not in line with how this stuff actually works. So I really love talking to people like you who seem to intuitively get this, especially at a young age, which just constantly blows my mind. Yeah.
I think that's it. Like, there's no matter how deeply I try to get into it, like whether I don't do this now, but like the weird magic.
Yeah,
stuff,
like, your ritualistic magic.
Yeah, like when I do, it's a little part of my brain, the rational part, the comedian part of my brain was going, okay, crazy, you're doing. Have you seen yourself, you mad bastard?
Of course.
It was. Have you what are you doing? Just go watch some Family Guy and chill out for a bit now.
Right.
And that is it, I suppose. Like that is the mechanism in my head to stop me hopefully falling into any kind of fundamentalist ideas.
Right.
Like, even because I think even sort of, I don't know whether this is like, because I've never suffered properly, but depression seems to be a little bit of a cycle of fundamentalist ideas, not in a bad way, because obviously it's one that really is to do with a chemical imbalance in the brain and can't be helped. But I would hope that I've got some sort of safety mechanism to where I can just sort of check myself, in the words of Ice Cube, before I wreck myself. And that is sort of it, I think. Well, like, when in the times like I've gone through bad days with anxiety and stuff like that, it seems to be a self-perpetuating cycle of, oh, well, what if this happens, and what if this happens? And I think the same is with depression, but in a more self-critical way, rather than a fear of everything around you sort of way. And that seems, it's easier said than done to be able to break that, because sometimes it does feel genuinely impossible. But like that, from a complete outsider's point of view, does seem to be sort of a fundamentalist thought pattern. Is that?
The difference between anxiety and depression, right? Anxiety is externally projected things that could happen to you. Depression, I think you're right. It's an internal kind of anxiety about yourself and not knowing what's going on. They're both examples of fear, right? And I think, going back, I'm going to continuously tie it back to the comedy stuff with you. One of the best antidotes for fear that I know is comedy, right? Laughing about something that's truly terrifying actually helps, right? Like that can snap someone out of like a completely panicked point of view. So I think they're related. I mean, I think you're naturally kind of, what I like about you, Jack, is you latch on to these concepts and you say them in a way that is plain spoken and makes sense, but they're also like you live this. Actually, I think if you note your own patterns, this is actually what you're doing, and it's really cool, man.
Yeah, I think that like that is something you've got to do, because I think if you're not, like, with the depression being and the anxiety and being, as you say, completely destroyed by humour, like I've got, like, even in the worst throes of like a panic attack, that I messaged you, didn't I, the other month, and there was, I was having this really, really weird experience, like, through what I now know is anxiety, thank God. And there was old Spanish men outside my hotel room blowing horns in protest, and even though I'd lost, like, I thought I'd lost connection to the world around me and I was never going to be the same, that is still very funny.
Yeah.
The fact that there's old Spanish men blowing horns outside there as a sort of accompaniment to this breakdown. That is, like, that's really funny. And like, I think that is, it's great at nullifying fear. Like, there's a comedian here. Well, he's dead now, but he's a comedian called Bob Monkhouse, right? And I'm not a massive fan of his, because he's sort of an old 70s style pre-alternative thing. But he reinvented himself in the 1990s, just before, I think it was the night just before he died, and he got cancer, and he had a joke which was, I've got a funeral parlour near my home, and they've got a picture of me in the window with "coming soon" next to it. Like, what a great way to just nullify any, like, that is just, death has come for him, and he's just jabbed it in the face.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, that's exact. I was watching a documentary on Netflix, the Tig Notaro, which is, she got diagnosed with cancer, was having tons of issues, and then one night just went, I think it was the Comedy Cellar, I might be wrong about that, but she went and just did, like, stand up, and just basically wore her heart on her sleeve, bore everything out, and it turned into this massive phenomenon. And you could tell, like, that type of comedy is what cuts through that. There's two aspects of comedy, right? There's the external, you as a comedian must know that, making people feel good, right? Letting people escape from their daily troubles by laughing at something. And then there's the internal benefit of, when you're laughing at something, that escape is also doing something else to you. It's giving you, even for a brief moment, another perspective on your situation, which, to me, that's one of the key takeaways that I've discovered in life, is the more perspectives you can cultivate, the easier your life will seem, right? I don't know if it's actually going to get easier. You could still have devastating things happen at any point in time, but if you're able to look at it from different perspectives, the chances of you not being so tied down to the situation increases. So I think that's just such a powerful thing, and it's just something I'm really interested in exploring continuously. I mean, it's it depends on the guests I'm going to have on the show, but I think there's a lot to be said what's going on in the comedy world all over the world right now. To me, it seems almost like a renaissance of comedy. I think we're at the perfect time with the technology where it's at, how quickly things can move, and also the voices and the people who are a part of it, yourself included. I mean, I think it's just like a really exciting time. And it also, one of the things that comes with comedy is sometimes is a sense of cynicism. And I think kind of navigating the cynical, kind of fucked up things that happen in the world, but in a light way that shows that there's still good things happening, is really important. And you don't want to be like a goofball about it, right? You don't want to be heavy-handed, like, oh, I'm going to be the comedian who says everything is okay, I'm the optimistic. It's like horrible. Like, who the fuck wants to be that person? But also towing the line of just like the weird shit that happens in life, and giving people a release is really an important role, I think, in today's world. I think
I've been watching, I don't know if you've ever seen it, but while I've been filming, I think you will have done because we've chatted about it before, but while I've been filming, I've been watching a lot of Louis, the sitcom, and that guy, man, he's just that show is just one of the best things. that is just so good. And as well, I think he had a very interesting thing in an article I was reading with him. Like, nobody he said, I'm paraphrasing now, but something like, I don't want to go and decry the evils of the world. I want to put all that on my shoulders and like say, well, I'm a shit person sometimes. And this is how I'm acting, now. And rather than go, oh, well, because there's only so much like screaming about, the election can get you.
Not to mention, it's like shooting fish in a barrel at a certain point, right? Like, I mean, how easy is it? I always say this, and I was a big Daily Show fan, but at a certain point, I didn't watch it that much anymore because I'm like, it's this like never-ending target practice. Like, you're taking aim at people who are literally just, come on, how would you not make? It's harder not to make fun of them. That should be the type of comedy we're doing. Not making fun of these people is like intelligent. Yeah, I mean, I love Louis. I mean, his stand-up and his show, I mean, he's brilliant. I mean, I think that's really important that you heard him say that focusing on because that's another key tenet of, right, all the spiritual stuff. It starts with you. If you put it all on you and you approach the world and the things that are fucked up and you start with the things that are in you, that's only going to have a positive impact on the people around you and then hopefully the world at large. But if you're just raging against the machine of all the stupid shit, not only is it somewhat easy, but it's also like, you're right, like, what are you going to do at a certain point? I mean, what is that actually helping with? What is that really? Are you contributing a new voice to something and a twist? So that's fair.
I think what, like you were saying earlier, like he's so great at distilling the human experience, just sort of taking a thing and then just wringing out all the jokes from it. But like. It's opposite. It's basically like it's a little bit in the same vein as Jerry Seinfeld, but like completely different because it's observational comedy, but about him and the little voice in his head, rather than, hey, ain't it funny that things are like this?
Yes.
Like that. Well, at a certain point, you sort of go, yeah, but what else? Like, you've just said 20 things that we've all noticed during our day, but what are you going to do now? What's your take on that?
Right.
And, like, I think that is where he's sort of really good at distilling the human experience into, like, even if, like, you can't... I think all these great artists, like, are very good at distilling the human experience, and even if you don't hit on it directly... it connects with you personally, you've had something like it, and that it's sort of like it is finding common ground, and it is observational, but in a, let's face it, in a better way than in a harder way, in a more difficult way.
Well, I think also what makes Louis and other comedians and just any artist, whatever they're doing, like you said, is the more genuine they are as a person. Like, everyone's unique, right? Let's just take that as a thing. There are no two people, no matter how homogenized we'd like to believe people to be in any demographic, whatever it is. No, everyone's unique, but to live that uniqueness and be genuine and also have the confidence to communicate it to the world in a specific way and do it well, that's the skill that we're talking about, right? I mean, that's what separates people. I mean, anyone can make observational humor, right? I mean, if you sat down, I think anyone could actually do this. Sit down, find things that you think are common experiences, you might be shitty jokes, but you can do it. And someone's probably going to like it. But to really extrapolate what's going on inside of your mind, realize how ridiculous so many of the things in our minds are, and then communicate that and relate it to something at large is a skill. And that's why Cosby didn't do that, and he just threw out bland observations, because if he looked inside himself, he'd be going, oh, well, the stuff I'm doing, it's really not okay. But like the character that he was projecting of Bill Cosby, family man, like that was a nice shield for him to not have to look within himself and go, I'm raping people.
I'm a dreadful rapist. And like, maybe if you'd done like a little bit about like but just before it got to that stage of, well, I've got a few got a few lewds lying around, and but I don't know. But
So
like
you
that
think his
is,
approach was, well, that's interesting. I would,
yeah.
just based on what's come out, I'm thinking this is more detailed planning than like, I got these, they're there, let's go. I don't
Yeah.
know.
But that is the thing, like the he was the epitome of like what at the most extreme level of what we've just been talking about,
Yes.
where someone is presenting a character in the world, like he is literally presented a facade to cover for like
Yes.
what we found out was within, which was the worst of human behavior.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I mean, I think Bill Cosby, I mean, let's go there because it's certainly on a lot of people's minds, especially when we talk about comedy. But, you know, I will admit that I don't know if this is admitting it now. I never really found Bill Cosby to be that funny. I didn't like the Cosby Show. Like my wife loved the Cosby Show, loves the intro, loves everything. I've heard his stand up, the Noah Zark thing, and it's okay, but it never struck me. And this may just be a generational thing as much as anything else, but he was never a comedian like who I would put up there as like, this guy is one of the big ones. But if you look at his career prior to all of this horrible stuff really gaining traction, because the truth is this stuff had been out there for decades. This isn't new. It's just we're refocusing on it in a more consistent light now. He's a juggernaut of comedy. That's why this is such a big deal. I never really got the whole thing. I like the Pudding Pop's voice, right? Who doesn't like doing an impression of that? But I mean, I think that's the type of comedy when I'm talking about the Renaissance, I guess, that I've been noticing and seeing some of it through podcasts, like people like Duncan, the Feral Audio. Definitely anyone listening, check that out. Dustin does amazing stuff there. It's this authenticity that's coming from people's personal experiences and translating it into a more universal thing and not a facade, not like I'm, doing this type of like, cause like, right. Isn't it almost like putting on a facade like that, a form of prop humor, right? You're putting up a fake you as the prop, right? It's not actually what's going on. So
I think, that being, the anti-phony brand of comedy, which I think has become popular, is also helpful for those depressed comedians because before, Robin Williams would have to go like snort half a gram of coke and then run around the stage screaming about, George Bush for 45 minutes and then go sit in his car and be depressed for the rest of the day. And like now, I don't think you have to do that as much. You just sort of well, I'm depressed, and that's the sort of the fact of the matter is I'm depressed, and like what is funny about that? If that's where your humor is, maybe that's not where his humor was. But I think like every time I see I know I put it on Facebook pretty regularly as well. Every time I see a thing about Robin Williams, it like reminded me that he's no longer here. Yeah, it makes me sad. Yeah, like properly, that he will not be able to make any more things, or I would have, and that is a sort of thing with Carlin and Hicks as well. What would they make of the world in 2015 and that sort of thing as well? Yeah. So I think, and that's what sort of like. Yeah, I think that's the thing is like being able to the anti-phoniness of, and again as well, that's not to say like that some comedy that is not
no, I get it. It's not to say that the comedy that you're doing, I think you're breaking up, so I'm going to fill in until you come back. But it's not to say the comedy that people are doing is inauthentic to, they are. Like, there's value to lots of different types of comedy. Slapstick, right? That's not like someone being an authentic real person, but it can be funny. I definitely get that. Yeah, continue.
Because there's an issue of sort of going up in a leather jacket, smoking a cigarette, and thinking you're Bill Hicks, and just like just shouting about like, oh well, the government, and then you sort of go, well, yes, you've pointed out the problem. We all know, we all know that the government does some awful things sometimes. But what are your solutions? Like
Right, exactly. Or what's your new take on it? What is some other way to look at it? I mean, well, I think you're just describing Dennis Leary if you're just talking about doing a Bill Hicks impression. So
Oh my God, that guy, man, that guy, and then to steal a dead man's act, right? To steal the essence of a dead man, and then after you've made all your money, to completely discard the politics and become a Republican.
yeah.
What a dreadful person.
It's not great. It's not great. It's not great. And that's a big, well, did you see recently, this was a big comedy thing, is the Fat Jew.
The Fat Jew.
Yeah, this is a huge deal now. This and just so people who may not know what I'm talking about, the Fat Jew, we're not being callously racist. It's a Instagram, Twitter account where someone who he would take other people's jokes and memes and things that they did were funny and then use them as himself to make to gain popularity, and then also directly many times purposely not attribute where he was getting the material from. He just signed a massive deal with CAA, an agency, and a lot of people are up in arms because they're like, hey, this is bullshit. This guy's literally just stealing jokes and getting rich.
Is he a comic? Why is he signed with CAA?
That's a great question. I don't know. I mean, I think it's probably a general entertainer. I never got into the whole Fat Jew thing because I had seen a lot of the stuff he posted before he posted it. To me, he would just add like a hackneyed comment, and I'd be like, what is the point of this? Like, I think it's funny when I find it the first time from the person who put it. And there's nothing wrong with sharing things you find funny. I think it was just the way he was doing it. I saw a video he did where like he slid into a bowl of chili, like a kiddie pool of chili or something. It wasn't funny. I mean, it was like...
No. Like that is the thing. Now the bitterness is coming out about from me about but I don't want to generalize,
right.
But most so-called I've been posting on Facebook about this, but the comedians that only use Vine and Twitter and things like that, that don't actually, that are not making that think they're a comedian because they can make a 6-second clip of like punching someone in the face and running away.
Right.
Like that, they are terrible. Like they are like that. I think they have taken the place in sort of the zeitgeist of those sort of phony comedians that we were talking about, like those sort of, because it's quick and it's easy and you don't have to think too deeply about what's just happened to you. Like that's the thing is, and a lot of them are sort of racist and
that's the Vine. I mean, I use Vine. I'm like one of the only people my age who I know who use Vine regularly. I like to follow a few people in particular, but they're typically like found footage edited stuff. I think that's really a clever way to use the platform. But I mean, if you ever go into Vine as someone who's not used it and try to go to the comedy section and you see what comes up as comedy. And these people have millions of followers and Vine millions and millions of times. I don't get it, man. I don't understand it. It's not comedy. And you can tell, I mean, there's something to be said. I think one of the things we haven't been explicitly saying, but you can comedy is so dependent on the person or people making it. Right? It really is them digging down inside of themselves and sharing something. So when it's this superficial kind of candy-coated, quick, like, here's what it is, like, yeah, it may give you a chuckle, but is it really what we're going for with this stuff? I mean, there's probably, merit to both sides of the argument for that, but I've experienced what you've experienced, which is I find it to be very fleeting. Here's the difference, right? Here's something. I hope this doesn't sound egotistical, but I put up quotes. I spoke about this on an earlier podcast. I put up quotes every day on Facebook, every weekday. Part of it is for other people. A large part of it is for myself to review, to think about it, to find it in the morning, to set the day up like that. There are also millions of other people on social media putting up quotes. You can tell the people who just found a quote, put it up because it's quick and it sounded nice and it was cutesy, and then like an actual quote that is like really has some substance behind it. And I think that's the same type of deal between the comedy that we're talking about. And it's really, Yeah.
Definitely. And I think like the immediacy of Vine and those sort of things lends itself to at a deeper level is part of a capitalist culture that lends itself to the fat Jew being able to steal from like poor comics who can't. Like that's the thing. It lends itself to that thievery, and then it's okay because I'm okay. I've sorted myself out. Like I don't have to worry about who I've plagiarized. And like I think that is it. And can I just say, like, your quotes are brilliant. I love your quotes on Facebook. They're great. And also then I can see quotes that have sort of been stolen from imposter Drake Instagram that say hard work and dedication, and like or something equally stupid like that. Like there is a real difference in quality. You're doing Aldous Huxley and all that sort of thing, and like
it's what you're talking about. It's the attention and intention behind what people are sharing with the world. And I think the more reflective you are on what you're sharing, not to a point of like tripping yourself up and being overly critical and overly analytical, but really just putting some attention and care into what you're communicating is important. It's like people don't get that. And I agree. This is a huge issue with the web for all of its amazing incredible qualities. It has, at least we don't know if it's inherent to the web. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Maybe it's inherent, like you're saying, to advertising and capitalistic, materialistic society. But it is definitely lending itself to these quick hits of just temporal, transient, superficial, blasts. And I mean, we don't need major studies to tell that that's probably not going to be good for younger people or just people connected to the web all day long, which is a lot of people.
I know my attention span is worse because of it. Like, I find it difficult to sit and read. Like, I'd much prefer to read an article than I would a full book about the thing. Like, and I think that's been evidenced in, I was hearing someone the other week talk about a study that, like, if a YouTube video doesn't grab someone within the first
2-3 seconds,
then they're gone. And like, that's the thing. I wanted to ask you actually about Huxley, because I put it on Facebook, Facebook the other week. He's not a great person, and I was just like, where did that come from? They said it was like because I read a quote that's I think Joe Rogan or someone had put up on Facebook, but it was like about the pharmacological. What does he call it? Where there'll be basically that due to a pharmacological thing, the society will be happy to be subordinate to the evil people.
Sure.
And someone commented underneath like that wasn't a friendly warning. He was gloating. I'm like,
I see.
Where did...
Well, I have, my main experience with Aldous Huxley comes from a couple different areas. Obviously, Brave New World and Island books, great. I mean, those stand on their own outside of who he was as a person. And then the other area is Ram Dass was friendly with him and his wife, Laura Huxley. And they had a lot of conversations. Aldous Huxley was actually the person who gave Ram Dass the copy of the Tibetan Book of the Dead, him and Tim Leary, and they found parallels between their psychedelic experiences and the book, which was obviously pretty astounding to them. So, he clearly has a huge standing in the psychedelic world and in the philosophical world. Now, having seen some videos of him speaking and read some of his writings, I think he had an air of confidence about him. I think he was also decades ahead of most people in realizing the influence of what we now know to be what we live in, advertising world, industrial military complex, all these things that really he predated. He was right on. So I imagine that rubbed quite a few people the wrong way, right? I mean, that is in the same way when I talk about something maybe a little too confidently, regardless of what I'm saying, if the person thinks I'm being a dick, they don't care if I'm right or wrong. So I can only, like, I didn't know him, obviously. I only have, stuff we have recorded in history. I don't get the sense that there was anything. I think he was just very opinionated and had a very real take on the world. Also, to throw in the extra bit, he was a big LSD taker. That's how he died. He actually took LSD. He, not because of it, but he was dying and tripped off into infinity. I have found it.
That is terrifying.
Well, you never know. You never know. You never know.
Why is that your plans?
No, me? No. I haven't done LSD in well over a decade. Some other psychedelics here and there. But no, I mean, I was gonna say, and then I was checking myself in my head here. I was gonna say a lot of people who do psychedelics, mind expanding drugs, transcendental drugs, whatever you want to call them, are typically pretty open minded. But that I actually have experiences where that's not the case. There's plenty of people I know who think because they've taken psychedelics or had some type of experience with outside, whatever it is, that somehow puts them in a more knowledgeable category than most people. And so other people are then to be looked down upon because they haven't had the experience. And that, I think there's a pretty pervasive culture of that underlying a lot of these things. That being said, I never really got that vibe from Huxley. A lot of the quotes, that I find from him or things I've read actually really seem to be very insightful, poignant, and have quite a bit of empathy, in them. So that's just been my take.
That's what sort of shocked me about it was like I've read like a lot of Ireland. I didn't quite finish it, but
Sure.
I read a lot of it, and I've read obviously the quotes that you put up and a few different quotes, and he seemed a decent guy. Like I just wanted to go, but don't be having a go. He's all right. He's Aldous, and that is the sort of like I think they were thinking that he was sort of a shill of the government. But then again, if your image gets shared on the internet, then you're not some lunatic will call you a shill of the government.
Please, of
Like,
course.
And that as well, I was reading the other week as well. Apparently, people were saying like Hunter S. Thompson was involved with the Bohemian Grove and that sort of thing as well. So, like, who can you can only take really what you know for definite, which is he said some pretty cool things. Like,
yeah, exactly. I mean, and Hunter S. Thompson, talk about that's a completely different type of guy, right? I mean, he was, definitely not an anarchist, but within the confines of society was completely outrageous. I forget which documentary it was. It was like his last days, and there was a documentary, and like, he was a really, really interesting guy, and also just took a lot of drugs, like a lot of drugs. So, people who take a lot of drugs, you're probably going to find examples of them either contradicting themselves or being kind of a little loony at times. I mean, so that comes part and parcel with it. But Aldous Huxley is a very, very interesting guy. And I think just one of those people I look back to who was like, okay, this guy was ahead of his time. Like his quotes, I'm quoting people from older than him a lot of the time, but anyone who's relatively in the past 100 years, 200 years, whose quotes still hold up, like they're onto something, they were tapping into something deeper than their cultural resonance at the time.
Including the phony Drake Instagram who posts you didn't have my back, well, I didn't need you anyway. Full stop.
God.
And that ahead of his time.
He's ahead of his time. That's 30 years. He's gonna look like a savant. I always just had. I don't know. Maybe I am just holding myself in too high of a light. But I just, it's one of the things that I think does a disservice to any spirituality is hard enough to get into on its own, right? With all of the stuff that comes with it, all of the ways it can change your outlook, your approaches, some of it won't do at all. You don't need to make it sappier and cornier than people already think it is, right? So when that stuff is just what people are used to seeing, you're not helping anyone there. And
This is a funny thing. Like, I messaged you last night about this, but I'm watching The Sopranos for the second time recently at the moment.
So good.
And he goes, Tony Soprano's line is, "We've had this before," to his sister Janice, "We've had this before with you, Vishnu, and you fucking Richard Halpert."
Yeah.
And that like, she she is obviously using like the spirituality and flitting from scene to scene, spiritual thing to spiritual thing as a defense mechanism
Right.
to not analyze her
Right.
terrible behavior, and that well, I've had a complicated like I think that is a sort of defense shield,
Oh, without a
for
doubt.
her as well,
I
and
mean,
that is a thing with a lot of people as well.
well, I
I've
think
learned.
the easiest way to identify someone who's kind of approaching it like that is if something bad happens to someone else and they say it's karma. If someone says that's karma, then that means they don't understand really what's going on. Sharon Salzberg had a great quote. I'm going to paraphrase it, but she was like, "It's not karma unless it's happening to you." Don't ever talk about someone else's karma, because truthfully, and I believe this, it's far too complex for us to understand. If you're incorporating the belief that of reincarnation and multiple lives, the way that karma could interact with a soul or a person throughout multiple lives, like, you have no idea. Where we can barely plan for a week ahead of today. We can't go back that far. So,
Yeah,
I
I really don't think the supreme being cares who stole your boyfriend particularly.
well, they might. They
that is
might,
not-
but not in the way you probably think about.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's totally true. So, yeah, I mean, I think that anything can be used, whether it's comedy, spirituality, anything can be used for your own selfish purposes, to either as a defense mechanism, either as an attack mechanism, as a egoic type of relationship. That's why I think, having some base to come back to things, some way to look at it from a clearer perspective, whether that's comedy, whether it's, a guru, whether it's, a community-based initiative where you feel good doing good for other people, something that those types of tools, I think, ultimately are what help people, truthfully. Because, like, you can't stop bad stuff from happening. You can mitigate it, you can plan, you can try, but it's still going to happen. We're all still going to get sick. We're all going to have loved ones who die. We're all going to die. So it's cultivating kind of an approach that can serve you throughout life that, to me, that's at least what I'm trying to do. And I noticed you doing it too. I mean, that to me is incredibly inspiring.
In a way, again, some of the concepts still seem abstract to me, but and also I shouldn't even really be talking about this because I haven't practiced in months. I've been just happy, sort of, and also, as I've said before, like, with this new anxiety thing, whatever it is, everything is tinged with that now. So I think, if I chant the Hare Krishna mantra, that I will suddenly be carried off into heaven and not be able to identify with, not be able to play The Witcher or do anything fun
How good
ever
is that
again.
game? Oh my!
It's very good. It's very good.
God.
It is good. It
It's
is good.
I mean, I'm going bananas for it. It's just like I'm probably put in like 60 hours. I don't even think I'm halfway through the game.
Yeah.
It's incredible. All right, continue. Sorry.
That is, well, I think as well, like that so that thing of it, that is why I haven't been, because again, that's an irrational fear and definitely what happened. But as I've said, I'm trying to do the thing you're saying, which is tether yourself back to just a normal existence for a while. Which I think I was talking with this about with my cousin the other week as well. Like, and it goes back to what we were talking about at the start, the iconoclasm and the dying before 27. I was going, obviously Jim Morrison went through this sort of shit, but instead of trying to tether himself and talking about it and that, he decided to eat lots of mushrooms and drink a bottle of whiskey every morning, and that is why he didn't last too long, because he wasn't able to tether himself back to reality after all this, in the face of adversity.
The more you plunge into the creative field, unconscious things that aren't tangible, esoteric. I think there is a necessary. You can go very, very deep, but you want that thing. Like if you're jumping into the water in the ocean, you need that line that's still connected to you. You can't just go scuba diving off into the abyss forever. Otherwise, you're going to be lost. You're not going to be coming back. So to have that connection, whatever it is, I know in times where I've in the past gone off deep end. I've dived off the diving board and been in the deep end for a little bit. I've found things as mundane as sports to a lot of people. Like, people don't understand how I'm a huge American football fan, and anyone who follows me on Twitter will know this very soon. But that is something that really kept me grounded, and it's something I think many people would approach like sports is stupid. It's the opiate of the masses. It's obviously just look at FIFA, look at the NFL, look at these horrible institutions that have surrounded it. But at the same time, there's something there that connects us to other people in life, and not in a superficial way, that is really important. So there's two things we're talking about. We're talking about delving into the unseen and things that we can't really perceive with our five senses, but yet we have a very good feeling, either via intuition or some experiences, that this stuff exists. And then approaching regular life, right? We've decided to be, in one way, shape, or form, a part of life and society. So really walking that tightrope and figuring out how to do that is a challenge for a lot of people, I think.
Yeah, and like that can be difficult because I think I've sort of tethered the thing with trying to tether yourself back to normalcy. It can be difficult because like the thing that I do to try and tether myself back to normalcy is that I think the same brain that I've mentioned this before, but the same brain that sort of gave me a sense of, everything will probably be fine, like, has now, due to whatever reason, with that same ferocity and power that gave me such a sense of well-being, has now decided to be piloted by a caveman, and now it's messing me around, and like that's the sort of thing is, I think, having an overactive imagination or brain can sometimes not be the best thing, and it's about finding a way to just go, all right, calm down.
Exactly. That's what it is, man. And I mean, I think there's so many different ways to do that, ranging from meditation to a mantra to something like comedy, something like sports, something like writing, something like making music. Whatever it is that works for you as an individual, that's what you need to do, because eventually, if you keep doing that thing over and over again, it really becomes an ally to you, and you can pull yourself out of deeper and darker situations, which, may not get deeper and darker for everyone, but they happen. And I think that's kind of that's what I realized this show is going to be about, is trying to talk to people about what their personal ones are, and also what they can share to help other people. Because there's no one person is exactly the same. Just because I believe in a monkey god with magical powers doesn't mean everyone else should or approach it in the same way. In my relationship,
but they should.
No, of course, I mean, it goes without saying. That's why I preach and invalid. I mean, I have. Convert to Hanuman.com. I got it. Yeah, please.
If you became the Fred Phelps of the monkey god world,
I want to be the evangelical. Are you kidding me? Did you see this John Oliver thing he did with these evangelical church hotlines? Watch it. Watch it. It's amazing. I mean, he signed up as a church. His show is a church, because it's apparently really easy to skirt tax laws if you say you're a religious institution, and it's apparently very easy to say that. And these people are literally like, send me money and I'll cure your cancer through the screen. And it's like, holy shit, you're a demon person. Like, what?
Yeah.
Do not know the ramifications, but check that out. It's great. This John Oliver it's amazing. That's what I want to be. I want to have a evangelical TV show for Hanuman where people can come up and send me lots of money, and I heal their things with magic powers. That's my dream. That's all. This is just a gateway to that.
You just go, right, okay, I've got a big orange here, and I'm going to eat it, and then you'll be cured.
That's exactly
because
right.
of
It represents
story.
Exactly.
And that like, I think, I wonder where that fear comes from now, because I was thinking about this the other week, and just as I'm getting myself on an even keel, I think however little the spirituality does affect consciousness in some way, and I think it's important for me now to get myself back on an even keel before I can start, messing around with.
I think that's smart. I think that's smart. Well, listen, here's the other thing. We spoke about this. privately, is with the ritualistic magic. I don't think people realize how potent that type of stuff can be. I think there are unseen ramifications for anything we do psychically with a lot of intention and focus. And to be aware of them is usually can be a good thing. But if you're just like prodding the unconscious and prodding an unseen world, you don't know what you're going to get back. And that may sound woo to some people, but I mean, this is based on personal experience. You had a personal experience about this with this stuff. So, I think that's wise. I think approaching this stuff in not too heavy of a way and at the right time, and knowing that, truthfully, when you approach spiritual stuff in the right way, it'll feel right. It won't feel forced. It won't feel phony. It won't feel icky. It'll just feel like, this is what's up. And it may change. You may totally gravitate towards something else later, but there will be a common thread that ties all of those experiences together, and just kind of honing in on that. And just being a regular person, I think that's where it's at. I mean,
that's Grant Morrison's quote about that is life plus significance equals magic.
Yeah.
And that's it. Like you look back on things and go, well, maybe if that hadn't have happened or things hadn't have turned out this way, then I wouldn't have got here. And but like that's the thing as well is I didn't even do anything that hardcore. Yet, like he, Grant Morrison or whoever can wander around in a leather jacket summoning Ganesh and still be absolutely and also tripping off his nut on drugs every day, like that, but yet still.
You never know. The truth is,
pretty cool with it.
You never know. You don't know. I'm the type of person where if you give me a tiny bit of any psychoactive substance, I will trip my balls off. Like there are some people who can just have a tolerance for it or have an approach to it. And I don't have bad trips, but some people do. You give them a teeny bit, they have a terrible trip, or you give them a ton, they don't even think they're tripping. So I think the point of it is a lot of this stuff comes from our mind, right? We're projecting things outward and inwardly. And so it's our approach there, and it's noting what's going on there first that can kind of give you the tools you need to wear a leather jacket and summon Ganesh to, go do your grocery shopping, get you a parking spot. Or you could say, hey, I'm trying to communicate, with this little bug, this beetle, and now I got beetles showing up around me everywhere. What the fuck is going on? All I say with this spiritual stuff is it's always a matter of direct experience. It's what you feel and what you do. Don't take anyone's word for it. I think the Buddha says that, right? Don't take my word for it. Go out into the world, experience this stuff, and then believe it. If anyone asks you to believe something or say this is the way it is, I just, from schooling, I am naturally rebellious against that. I don't want to believe something said to me just because they said it. That's not to say I won't, but I have a natural aversion to that, and that's a good and a bad thing. But yeah, I mean, listen, there's a lot of different occult, magic, spiritual, religious, philosophical avenues to go down in life. I am a firm believer that if you have an interest, that's it, just an interest in finding out more, learning more, gaining wisdom, whatever it is, you'll get the right ones at the right time. That to me, if you don't look for this stuff, you're never going to find it, and you're just going to be caught in a wheel. But you don't strike me as the type who's ever going to do that, so wouldn't worry about it. And I think your approach, avoiding is good.
The thing as well is the main sort of tenet of I was thinking is just because you think something, it doesn't make it real. Whereas the main tenet of chaos magic is just because you think something, it does make it real. Yes. So what am I supposed to do with that?
Yeah. No, I mean, it's a listen, there's a lot of contradictory things in a dualistic universe, right? I mean, we know that. I think it's just realizing what is applicable to what situation, right? Quantum mechanics says that we can teleport, that things that are not connected as we believe as space-time, like regular physics, Newtonian physics. That doesn't mean that because I, prick myself here, you're going to feel it there. That's not what it means. So there's scale to all of this stuff too, which is important. And just because what you're thinking is true or some psychic incantation you're doing has weight and value to it doesn't mean it's going to interact in the same way as something we're used to experiencing in the physical world. So that's why, I mean, my advice to you always was with the magic stuff is I don't think there's inherently anything wrong with it. I think they can be actually used quite positively. Just have all of the information about what you're doing before you do it. So in case something comes up, it's like a map, right? The more maps you have about a territory you're traveling to, the more comfortable you're likely to be in the situation.
That is a good metaphor for life. You don't want to look back one day and go, "Oh shit, I summoned Cthulhu." Like, you don't want to have to vanquish, a demon.
Exactly.
Like, and that all, you can summon a metaphorical Cthulhu in the form of, your shitty actions then lead to this.
Absolutely.
thing.
Or negative emotions or anxiety. Those are very real demons in many ways. I mean, certain Tibetan philosophies refer to those things specifically as demons. So, I mean, I think there's a ton there. All right. I hate to do this. I have to cut us off. I
don't need you telling me now that I've been possessed by a demon.
No, you're possessed by a demon. You're totally fucked. You're fucked.
Oh, good, great.
And show's over.
And you're joking. I'm not possessed by a demon. I'm all right.
No, of course you're not. Of course.
But yeah, I mean that is it. We've got an hour. We've done an hour there.
That was
good.
pretty awesome. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for this. I am going to send you a copy of this for you to listen to and probably put some posts in later.
Cool.
I'll probably just fade us out talking at some point, so we don't have to have an official start point. So it's over. It's gonna be cool. I'm hoping you're the second person I've sat down with to do this. My first guest was Zach Leary, Timothy Leary's son.
Cool.
Yeah,
that is cool.
Yeah, it's going to be really cool. He's such an interesting guy. Really, very much a similar theme I'm noticing just from that one to this one is like there's an interest in the spiritual stuff, but there's also this kind of like rebellious, like, I'm still like it's like I'm in the world. I still want to be a person, and that to me is how I am. So I like to have that kind of reflect in my guests.
That's a good way to be.
Yeah.
I think, that is. I think try to connect because there's a certain point where you do all the reading and you read all the stuff and you go, I'm chanting, I'm doing whatever. But you're not actually connecting with the people in front, and you've got to really I think it's nice, just a little bit of relaxed normalcy is nice now and again.
I think it's really important. I mean, I don't have any illusions about this being like a transformative major podcast, but I think I can hit a large enough subset of people who are dealing with this type of shit, who are recognize the inherent value of like a Jack Kornfield meditation, but also aren't ready to go to a fucking retreat for 8 days in Maui and be loved out. So
I think that it's the equivalent of sort of when you've had a hard week of work or whatever. It's nice to sometimes just sit down, put the TV on something stupid, and just sit there and relax for a little bit. And I think that is the sort of equivalent of this.
Cool, man.
And I think that discussion about comedy was a good one as well.
Me too. Really important too, because it has been something I've noticed, because there's something else going on in the comedy world these days. There's so much more authenticity across. I mean, that's not to say everyone's doing it, but there's something happening which I don't think is fully known yet, and I'm interested to see how it plays out over the next, however long.
Yeah, it seems to be doing with what you're doing right now, which is getting a microphone in front of you. Like the fast acceleration of sort of comedy because of the internet, and then being able to call people out on their bullshit.
Yeah.
The internet, they work in tandem together.
They do,
to create a sort of a harmonious, good thing.
Cool.
Nice one.
All right, man.
All right.
I'll speak to you on Twitter and whatnot soon. I got a meeting
Good
after
stuff.
this. But yeah, man, recorded, good to go.
Good luck. What's the show called, by the way?
Don't know yet. Got it. I got to come up with music and a name. I'm gonna get like 4 recorded and then work on it. Probably launch it in September sometime.
Cool, nice one, man.
Cool, man.
All right.
Easy.
Bye. Bye.
So then, in music, though, one doesn't make the end of a composition the point of the composition. If that were so, the best conductors would be those who played fastest. And there would be composers who wrote only finales. People go to a concert just to hear one crashing chord, because that's the end. Same way in dancing. You don't aim at a particular spot in the room. That's where you should arrive. The whole point of the dancing is the dance. Now, but we don't see that as something brought by our education into our everyday conduct. We've got a system of schooling which gives a completely different impression. It's all graded. And what we do is we put the child into the corridor of this grade system with a kind of, come on, kitty, kitty, kitty. And yeah, you go to kindergarten, you know. And that's a great thing, because when you finish that, you'll get into first grade. And then, come on, the first grade leads to second grade, and so on. And then you get out of grade school, you go to high school, and it's revving up, the thing is coming. Then you're going to go to college, and by Jove, then you get into graduate school. And when you're through with graduate school, you go out and join the world. And then you get into some racket where you're selling insurance. And they've got that quota to make. And you're going to make that. And all the time, this thing is coming. It's coming. It's coming. That great thing, the success you're working for. Then when you wake up one day about 40 years old, you say, my God, I've arrived. I'm there. And you don't feel very different from what you always felt. And there's a slight letdown because you feel there's a hoax. And there was a hoax. A dreadful hoax. They made you miss everything by expectation. Look at the people who live to retire and put those savings away. Then when they're 65, they don't have any energy left, they're more or less impotent, and they go and run in an old people's senior citizens community. Because we simply cheated ourselves the whole way down the line. We thought of life by analogy with a journey, with a pilgrimage, which had a serious purpose at the end. The thing was to get to that end, success or whatever it is, or maybe heaven after you're dead. But we missed the point the whole way along. It was a musical thing, and you were supposed to sing or to dance while the music was being played.